Hi, this is one of the first very important lecture on brachial plexus. Let's try to wrap it down in around 20 minutes or lesser. Okay, and I mean end to end. Okay, so the first thing that I want you to understand is this mnemonic, which means Randy drunk drinks cold beer. And what I mean by that is Randy is for root, okay, drunk is for, obviously, as the word drunk of the plexus goes, it means trunk. Drinks means division, cold means chords, and beer means branches. Now, roots are obviously the roots that we have, which we'll get to. The trunks are going to be of three types, which is going to be your upper trunk, your middle trunk, and the lower trunk. Okay, as simple as that: upper, middle, lower. Drinks are going to be divisions. We don't have to remember the names. Cold is going to be chords, which means lateral, posterior, medial. Okay, now that is something that you have to remember. And B is for branches. Now, very important kind of a thing is that when you drink when Randy Trunk drinks a lot of cold beer, he gets a bill of rupees 2,203 or whatever, $2,203 or whatever. Okay, so 2,203 is going to be help us in remembering what all do we have to fill in when we are kind of making the diagram. All right, so 2 is going to be for root. Okay, so we want to remember that we have to think about two nerves coming out from the root. We need to know that we're going to remember about two nerves coming out from the trunk, specifically the upper trunk that we have here. And drinks, we should know that there are going to be 0 coming out from the divisions, and 3 is from you'll have 3 chords, and branches are, you can't remember how many branches you have, but I mean, you've got to remember there are a good amount of branches, so I have not put a number to that. Okay. So first of all, let's look at the roots that we have, right? So let me zoom in on the roots. The roots that we have are going to be C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1. Now 5 and 6 like to go together. That's why I've kind of bracketed them together. And 5 and 6 seems pretty innocent, nice. Okay, seven kind of goes alone by itself. Okay, it doesn't easily form a trunk with the other nerves. So how I remember it as, or how anyone could remember it, is that CR7 kind of likes being a relatively solo player, so 7 is that. C8, T1 again kind of go together to form the lower trunk. Okay, now looking at C5 and C6, as I said, the 2203 is an important box, is an important cheat box that we have. So the first two that we are looking at is the one is the two nerves that come up from the root, and the first that we should remember is going to be your dorsal scapular nerve. Now 5 looks a lot like the letter S, and as I've written, dorsal scapula is for C5. Now what does it supply? It kind of supplies the rhomboids. Okay, it supplies the rhomboids, and it supplies the levator scapulae. So it supplies these kind of muscles. Okay, so the dorsal scapula is practically that. Then the next nerve that everyone would remember and should remember, because it's so commonly repeated on test day, is the nerve that I have kind of drawn on the green, which means it's really important. Okay, just for completion's sake, levator scapulae. Okay, yeah, so the one in green, okay, that is nothing but your long thoracic nerve, and that's super important. Okay, there's a reason why this is black and green, which we'll look at later. The long thoracic nerve kind of supplies the serratus anterior, and serratus anterior paralysis kind of leads to the winging of scapula. So it's important to know that 5, 6, 7 is lateral thoracic, long thoracic nerve. Okay, so we are done with the first two that we have, which is your 2203. Okay, then the second two that we have, which is going to be from the trunks part, because Randy Trunks drinks cold, right? Cold and beer, right? So T again from the trunk, There are two nerves from the trunks that you should remember, which is obviously from the upper trunk, as I've already said, is going to be your suprascapular nerve and your nerve to subclavius. Okay. Now, as the name suggests, it's going to be obviously supplying the subclavius muscle, whereas the suprascapular nerve supplies both the supraspinatus and the infraspinatus. Okay. So we want to know that as well. Okay. Having said that, because just a way of remembering it, upper trunk is made by 5 and 6, so both of the nerves are going to be having your roots as C5 and C6. No rocket science in that up till now. Okay, so we've kind of completed the second part of this major chunk, okay, which is trunks. Now, divisions is something that we don't want to enter because it's unnecessary. There's no point entering it. Let's directly jump on to the chords, right? So I'll just move to the chords part of it, right, in the annotated region. Okay, so let's look at how the lateral chord is formed. Now, the lateral chord comes from your C5, as you can see from here in the dotted line that I have made, from C6 obviously, and also from C7. So it kind of has 5, 6, 7. Now, anything that comes from the lateral chord would have the same same root as the lateral chord, and this is the rule only for lateral chord, more or less. This rule doesn't follow in the posterior chord. Okay, this is the rule for lateral chord and the medial chord. Okay, so these guys, the lateral and the medial chord, are rule followers. That means the nerve branches are also going to have the same nerves, same roots, all of them. Okay, so they're going to have 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, and the other. So let's look at the divisions that come out from the lateral chord. Okay, so the first division that comes from the lateral chord is going to be your lateral pectoralis nerve, which is supplying your pec major, and as the chord has 5, 6, 7 as its root, this also has your 5, 6, 7 at its root. Okay, next is going to be your musculocutaneous nerve. Okay, so the musculocutaneous, which is standing by musculocutaneous, do not get confused with the medial cutaneous. Okay, musculocutaneous means the muscles of the arm are going to be biceps, coracobrachialis, brachialis. Okay, and it kind of pierces the coracobrachialis that much into the muscle. It is ingrained into the muscle. Okay, so that's how I want you to think. So which is again going to be 5, 6, 7 because of the lateral chord being 5, 6, 7. Both lateral pectoralis nerve and the musculocutaneous nerve, both are going to be 5, 6, 7. Lateral pectoralis kind of supplies the pectoralis major itself. Now, having said that, musculocutaneous nerve also supplies the sensory lateral aspect of the forearm, and that is so important. This is so important on test day. I cannot stress enough. Okay, so I'm gonna make a star next to it because it's so important on test day. Okay, the next thing that I want you to remember quickly is going to be how there is a lateral division of the median nerve. Okay, and again from 5, 6, 7, it has the same root value as 5, 6, 7. So we'll look at the median nerve later, but let's just remember that there is a lateral division of the median nerve which is getting 5, 6, 7. So now let's look at the posterior chord. Now posterior chord is how is it made? Okay, how is the posterior chord made? Okay, so one important division comes from here, which I'm kind of highlighting. Okay, which is from your 5 and 6. Okay, there is one coming from your 7 here, and obviously there is one coming from C8 and T1. So practically your posterior chord has 5, 6, 7, 8 and T1. Now the mnemonic that you should remember for posterior chord is going to be RATS as in the radial nerve, A is for the axillary nerve, T is for thoracodorsal nerve, S is for subscapular. Okay, now R is radial nerve obviously, so radial nerve is going to be having all of them. Okay, because R is the first one, I want you to remember RATS as 5, 6, 7, 8, T1 radial nerve. Axillary nerve, very important because it supplies the upper part. Okay, I just want you to remember axillary nerve is supplying up means 5 and 6. Okay, next is your upper subscapula and lower subscapula. Both of them are, the subscapular nerve is again relatively higher. I want you to think of 5 and 6 again, in spite of it being shown at a lower part in the diagram. I want you to think 5 and 6. Thoracodorsal is going to be latissimus dorsi, which is why you should be thinking about 6, 7, This is something that you have to learn itself. Okay. Now, thoracodorsal supplies the latissimus dorsi, which is a lower muscle, which is why it has 6, 7, 8 as its root. What I want you to know also, along with only the with the nerves and the roots, is what muscles do they supply. So axillary nerve, as we've been always covering the muscles as well, let's cover it here as well. The axillary nerve supplies the teres minor, very important, the teres minor and the deltoid. Okay, and very important is that it also gives the sensory aspect of the lateral shoulder region. Now again, this is a very important point on test day, because they usually test which is the other muscle, and they also supply the sense, they also test for the sensory supply of the axillary nerve. Then the next thing that I want you to know is that thoracodorsal is by the lattice, supplies the latissimus dorsi. This is kind of forgotten and sometimes confused with the long thoracic nerve, which supplies the serratus anterior, which is again a very important point, right? The upper and the lower subscapular, the upper subscapular nerve supplies only the subscapularis, okay, but the lower subscapularis supplies the subscapular and teres major. So again, this is something that can confuse you if it is a teres minor or a teres major. Okay, but you have to remember that teres minor is the one which is with the axillary nerve. All right. The radial nerve supplies what? It supplies the triceps. It supplies all the extensors of the arm and the of the arm and the forearm, which in the arm is obviously the triceps, but in forearm the other, all the extensors. Okay, the even the acroneus. Okay, it also supplies the abductor pollicis longus, the extensor pollicis longus. Okay, the skin, the posterior aspect of the nerve, and all of those. So we'll get into that later, because this is a much detailed explanation if I get into it. But for now, let's just stick to that. Okay, and now we are going to look at the median cord, right? The medial cord, and as you can see, that medial cord has it kind of forms because of C8 and T1. So medial cord is also going to follow the rule like the lateral cord, is that all of the nerves are going to have C8 T1. Okay, so for instance, the medial pectoral nerve is going to have C8 T1. It supplies the major and minor both. Okay, if possible, remember it supplies minor and major both. The medial cutaneous nerve, C means cutaneous, medial cutaneous nerve of the arm is going to have C8, T1, T2. Now this T2 is actually from your intercostal nerve, and this could be a potential question, or the examiner might just like to ask you this, and you could just have this as a, as a cookie, as a brownie point. All right, then you could have the medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm. Again, it's going to have C8T1 because as it comes from the medial cord, as basic as it gets. The ulnar nerve is C8T1. The ulnar nerve is called the musician's nerve because it supplies so much, right? It supplies so much because it supplies the flexors, the medial aspect, obviously, of the flexors of your forearm, the flexor carpi ulnaris, the flexor digiter and profundus, obviously again the median aspect. Only the lumbricals, the third and fourth lumbricals, all right, the adductor pollicis, the adductor digiti, the dorsal interossei, all of those. Now obviously that is something that you would have to kind of take your book and read, but the only reason I'm doing this is for completion's sake, because we need to have a overall idea of how the brachial plexus looks, right? And median nerve that we are going to have now again is a part of the lateral median and your medial median, which is together forming the median nerve, right? Now the medial median gives C8T1, the lateral median gives C5, C6, C7, which I've written. So in totality, your nerve root is going to be C5, C6, C8, T1. All right, so that's going to be your median nerve. Median nerve supplies what? Actually, median nerve supplies a lot of things. It supplies it supplies the lateral aspect of the flexors of the forearm. It also supplies the muscles of the hand. Okay, right. It also supplies the lumbricals. It supplies the opponents, the muscles of the thumb. It supplies a lot of different things. So next video that we look at is going to be about what do each of these nerves supply. But for now, if you really need to take a screenshot of this super crowded but how do I say, amazingly well explained, you could go ahead and take it. Thank you.